Colin, we also had a survey which is in the back pages of the newspapers today. It was a Tenio Sports survey which came out. It was 1,000 people who were surveyed in all. And according to the people, as you can probably see on screen now, the most admired Irish athlete, Katie Taylor, 16%, Kelly Harrington, 14%. So those two boxers accounting for more than a quarter of all the votes here. Rachel Blackmore, who had her winning weekend with the Irish Times Awards, the BBC World Sportsperson, and also the RTÉ Sportsperson of the Year across the weekend on 9%, along with Johnny Sexton, the Ireland and Leinster rugby captain. Paul O'Donovan, 4%. I'm sure we'll get your Cork opinion on that in a moment. I thought he was very unlucky, along with Fintan, not to win Team of the Year at the RTÉ Awards of the weekend. Ellen Keane on 4%, Tyke Furlong on 4%, and the Ireland soccer captain Katie McCabe also on 4%. They're the most admired athlete. We'll talk about the moment of the year and the sports teams in a moment, Colin, but just to go with most admired, probably no great surprise that Katie Taylor and Kelly Harrington are there. Like, Katie Taylor probably steps up for her next year with Amanda Serrano, which is the fight we've been waiting for so long, but she's come through 2021 with her undisputed lightweight world titles in tow. And Kelly Harrington, for me, probably moment of the year was getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to watch her final at the Tokyo Games. She's been embraced, but I noticed across this survey there's not actually a huge, let's say, love reflection on the Olympic teams. Is that because everything was at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning and maybe people didn't attach on in the way they usually do for an Olympics? Or what do you think the reasoning is behind that?
Yeah, I think there are a variety of reasons that people really get attached to someone. I think it's easier when it's an individualistic sport, something like that, if people aren't necessarily avid fans of the particular sport. And I think if a team is really going to catch the imagination, I think each member has to have a really big personality or distinctive character trait, or something really monumental has to happen in their chosen sport to really capture the public imagination. So I think that leaves us with the more individual sports. And it's absolutely no surprise to see Kelly Harrington up so high. And it's actually great to see because, like you referred to it there with that Olympic final, I actually can't remember any sporting event where I was more nervous, especially in the second round. I remember watching it, and it wasn't just the stereotypical edge of your seat, but I was shaking a little. You know, it was kind of an uncontrollable moment because I really, really wanted her to win. And then when she did, and just the pure, unadulterated joy on her face, and then the homecoming. And like, it's been such a dark 2 years. And for Kelly Harrington just to light up the country and again transcend the sport, everybody for those few days were just on a high as a result of her achievements. And I think that's what really captures the public imagination. And that's sport at its best. You know, sport at its best garners interest from people who have absolutely no interest in it. And that's what it can do, because it's all down to human emotion. So I think that's why you're seeing so many individualistic sports up there, because the best sports stars are a reflection of the people themselves. And I think Kelly Harrington is a national treasure as a result.
Yeah, I wonder if her humility and, you know, Hakuna Matata and just how relaxed she was during the Olympics, and I guess that access that you get from an interview that takes place after each fight and where she was very much to the fore. Like, this kind of reminds me of when it was the O'Donovan brothers who were in the boat together back in 2016. That, like, their popularity exploded because of how interesting they were after the races. And so many people started watching rowing because it was like, these two guys are remarkably entertaining. Not only are they incredibly good athletes, but they also make for good television.
Yeah, I mean, look, how interesting is rowing to people who have no interest in it? You know, it's really hard to get into rowing because you're just watching this repetitive exercise. Now, the rowing community will be like, what are you talking about? You don't know, you're so ignorant. What are you talking about?
You're going to be banned from Cork, Colin. You're not going to get back home for Christmas.
I bring it home, Will, don't worry. I'll bring it around. But I would say, like, if you're looking at this, like, objective repetition of motion, you're like, oh my God, you know, what's going to happen? Is there a through ball that can happen here? Like, is there a red card or something? Can I stick my teeth into this? But then you have the characters and they get out of the boat and they talk, and then, okay, I'm immediately buying into this because these guys are so passionate about what they do. And if you listen to someone who is passionate about what they do, you're immediately a bit interested, no matter what it is, because you're buying into them as people. And that's what happened with Paul and Gary O'Donovan at 2016 Olympics. And as a result, we've seen in subsequent years is that, you know, Paul is genuinely world class in his field, and, you know, described as a bit of a genetic freak. And Fintan McCarthy's brilliant too, but Fintan would say the same thing about Paul. And then, you have kind of the, maybe the bittersweet element too, that Gary, I think, as Paul and Fintan took home the gold in Tokyo, was, I think, reportedly, in the air, might not have even seen the race. And, you do feel for him a bit too, and you think there might be a bit of a divide in the family about being absolutely thrilled for one member and then, a bit sad for the other. So, that narrative, I guess, again, just continues to capture the imagination. But it's the people in the boat that we're getting behind. And to have genuine world-class athletes like Paul and Fintan, like Kelly Harrington, like Katie Taylor, like, it is absolutely brilliant, because like, I get a bit tired of the stereotype of Irish sports people that, we try very hard, we give it our all, but we kind of lack a bit of skill. But that's absolutely not the case. That we actually are quite skillful across a number of sports. And I think in 2021, we've displayed that on a world stage. And there's an awful lot to be proud of as a result.
Yeah, I think it's not insignificant as well when you look at this on the back of the promotion of women's sport over the last 18 months in particular. With 2020, you've got Katie Taylor, Kelly Harrington, Rachel Blackmore, Ellen Keane and Katie McCabe all inside the top 7 here. Like, it's a pretty female-dominated, most admired list. Moment of the year, no great surprise, we talked about it already, Kelly Harrington's goal coming in at 20%. The Ireland rugby team beating New Zealand at 19%, I wonder is a combination of maybe those who were surveyed and also a certain amount of recency bias too. Look, it was great to have a full crowd back at the Aviva Stadium, but ultimately it was an autumn international, as opposed to, I think, the 11%. Rachel Blackmore's wins at Aintree and Cheltenham are far more significant. Winning the champion hurdle, becoming a top jockey at Cheltenham, winning the Aintree Grand National, first female jockey ever to do so. 10% coming in for the rowing gold at the Olympics. So, like, there's a big split in terms of moment of the year. But I'm not sure, Colm, if the Ireland team beating New Zealand, as fine a performance as it was, is it really the second best Irish sporting moment of the year?
Yeah, totally. And you know why? It was
above Olympic gold medals.
Well, it was a controlled, relatively comfortable victory in the end. And the reason that it's so high up is because, again, it was kind of displaying world-class tendencies, I would say, when it comes to the rugby team. Not quite a world-class team yet, but it was a really well-deserved victory, whereas the one in 2018 was so unbelievably dramatic. And then in Chicago before that, it was like, oh my God, this feels like an incredible one-off achievement that we can all celebrate as a nation and remember it fondly years on. But the most recent iteration of the victory against New Zealand was a very kind of calm, controlled, measured victory. And I think there's a lot to be said for that, because, as I was saying there, when you're caught up with the emotion of a sport that you might not be that interested in, this is a national sport that, we're one of the best countries in the world at. And we actually illustrated it that day with kind of a consummate professional victory over, the great All Blacks. And I actually fully agree that it should be that high. I think with Rachel Blackmore, this is just a complete theory, obviously, and, clearly an opinion. But it's because her dominance was so consistent throughout that week, that maybe there wasn't one solidified moment that you could grab onto. I'm just speculating that's maybe
why. What about the Grand National? The Grand National genuinely sticks out as a...
Completely, but because it wasn't just that, maybe that's why it's a bit lower, because there wasn't one particular moment, like you're looking at reading in the years in 20 years' time, is that the absolute moment that we can grab onto that, okay, that was the best sporting moment of the year.
See, maybe. I think now, if you want a reading in the years moment column on rugby, right, and Ireland beat New Zealand, if Ireland beat New Zealand in France in 2023, then that becomes a reeling in the years moment. I think this is a victory in a test match that's part of an autumn series where the All Blacks were wrecked. We saw that against France as well. Enjoy the moment, by all means, but I don't know how that gets ahead of Blackmore. I don't know how that gets ahead of the guys winning the gold medal in the rowing. Again, to each their own. This is a survey of only 1,000 people as well. Favourite team then? We had the Olympics Irish team getting 24%. The men's rugby team coming in on 22%, which is again why I wonder about maybe some of the people who were surveyed here by putting the men's rugby team up there. Albeit they had a good year. They won, 8 test matches during the year. Paralympics at 15%. You've got the women's soccer team coming in at 12%. I think they've gained a lot of love with the extended exposure that they've gotten with all the TV coverage and also marketing campaigns, and they've been very much out to the fore. I'm a little bit surprised, Colm, to be honest, the Limerick hurling team gets 12%, because I think at some point people will turn against the Limerick team if they continue to dominate hurling. And already there's a bit of a discussion about whether they overstep the mark physically and the way that they play the game. It always happens when a team is successful. I think when Limerick first came through in 2018, it was like a famine has been ended since the 1970s. They play some great hurling. Look at the players they have, the way they move the ball. They can shoot from all over the pitch. Now that they've been, collecting multiple league titles, Munster titles, and they've dominated the All-Ireland over the last 3 seasons, I think at some point that love for the Limerick hurling team is going to turn, a little bit like the Dublin football team. Like, no one really begrudged the Dublin football team at the turn of the last decade, but once it started to turn into 4 All-Irelands in a row, 5 All-Irelands in a row, people wanted to change and someone else to win.
Yeah, 2011 seems a long time ago for Dublin's victory, from 1995 to then, and now it's like, oh God, Dublin. And yeah, Limerick, like I was there that day, 2018, the semi-final when Cork were 8 points ahead with 8 minutes to go, I think.
Yep.
And then Limerick were, I think Dowling came on and just changed the whole game. And now 3 years on, you're like, yeah, Limerick are absolutely unbelievable. But I absolutely don't begrudge their consistent success because they make hurling so enjoyable to watch. Like, is it tiki-taka, Limerick's hurling? Because their passing is just unbelievable to watch. Like, they're a genuine joy. And if that success and I wouldn't say dominance, but certainly being the best team in the country, if that continues for the next decade, I don't think I'll have much of a problem. If you sprinkle in a Cork victory here and there, I'll absolutely take that. But no, they're a joy. They're absolutely a joy. But I think your point is interesting, that will people start getting sick of them? You see, people get sick of winners. I don't know if it's a national psyche that we don't like people who are too obvious and insist upon themselves that they're so good over a prolonged period of time. Like, as a country, do we just like a one-off winner that's very humble about it? And, I'm very thankful for all the support, and it was just great to be out there, and I can't believe I won, and I couldn't have done it without you. And then they kind of disappear for a while, especially as a team. But I think it's great. I think we should embrace this American style of absolute dominance, whether it's on the domestic or international front.
Well, see, I think the only thing Limerick need now, which is outside of their own control, they need a dance partner. So they need a team who get up to their level consistently, and there's a series of interesting games between them. Because one of the reasons that Dublin became such an interesting team to watch was because of the battles they had against Mayo. Mayo came up short and Dublin came out on top pretty much in all of them. But Dublin's brilliance was actually improved by Mayo being a really good opponent for them during the period where they were successful. We saw Kilkenny match up very well against Limerick in 2019 and beat them in a semi-final, but generally Limerick have found the answer against the rest of the teams around them in the All-Ireland Championship. They could do with Henry Shefflin making Galway excellent, or Kilkenny getting back up to a level, or Tipperary next year getting back to their 2019 level again and being a very, very difficult opponent to shake off. I think that makes Limerick a little bit more interesting. I want to talk to you about Drive to Survive in a moment, just to tell you about the other one, which is the event that people are most looking forward to in 2022. Six Nations on 29%, the FIFA World Cup 26%, All-Ireland hurling at 12%, and All-Ireland football at 9%. The one that surprised me is the World Cup at 26%, because I think a lot of people are, football fans are sharing concerns about the time it's on, where it is, what it's going to have an impact on the domestic season, but yet sports fans appear to be still very interested in the World Cup.